Blood and Bone begins when a man named Bone, who is in prison, is approached by a gang of delinquent inmates who want to bully him. Unexpectedly, it turns out that Bone has great martial skills so that he can cripple them all in a short time. After years in prison, Bone was finally released and moved to Los Angeles. He rents an apartment belonging to a woman named Tamara. As a landlady, Tamara asks him not to cause trouble while living in her apartment building and tells him some important rules while he lives there. The scene then switches and shows the atmosphere of underground fights fronted by James' mob boss. James has a mainstay fighter, Hammerman, who has an unbeaten record in every fight and has a fierce fighting style. That night, Hammerman will fight a fighter sponsored by Pinball, a local fight promoter. However, the fighter is not a worthy opponent for Hammerman because the burly man can easily knock out Pinball's fighter and almost kill him if Pinball doesn't stop him. Because he lost the bet, Pinball handed over the money to James reluctantly because he was known to intimidate other people often. When Pinball returns to his car, he is surprised by the presence of Bone, who asks him to make him an underground fighter and fight Hammerman. Pinball initially refused because he didn't want to risking his money for someone he didn't know. But Bone manages to convince him by making a pretty lucrative deal for Pinball if he's willing to take him into the fray. Once entering the battle arena, Bone met with James and his girlfriend Angela. Thinking that Bone is interested in his girlfriend, James tries to warn Angela and confirms to Bone that Angela is his. Pinball immediately arranged Bone's first fight against a prominent fighter without lingering. Bone entered his first dungeon fight and quickly defeated his opponent with just 2 kicks. Seeing Bone's fighting ability, Pinball decided to continue being a promoter for the man. Bone doesn't mind this as long as he can immediately fight with the Hammerman. Bone then asks Pinball about Angela. But he then warned Bone not to approach Angela. Pinball explains to Bone that Angela was previously married, but James framed her husband in triple murder and sent him to prison. When James finds out that Angela is pregnant, he orders Angela to have an abortion. Since then, Angela became addicted to drugs and could not escape from James. The scene then switches and shows James, who is engaged in a conversation with his business partner. It is clear that James is a cold-blooded mafia, where he did not hesitate to kill his business partner just because his colleague accidentally said something unpleasant. The next day, Bone seems to be getting closer to Roberto, an old man who lives in the same apartment building as him. The two of them often played chess. Not only with Roberto, Bone also looks familiar with Jared, the boy Tamara adopted. That evening, Pinball returns to take Bone to the battlefield to defeat several fighters at once and humiliate a promoter who acted fraudulently. Over the next few nights, Bone carved out his own success and a big name in the underground fighting scene, defeating every fighter in his path and earning thousands of cash for himself as well as Pinball. Even though he has become a famous fighter, Bone never forgets himself and always trains every day to improve his fighting ability. One night, when Bone returns to his apartment injured, Tamara takes the initiative to treat his wound. Tamara then expressed concern about Jared because she was worried about her son's condition, who always seemed gloomy. The next day, Bone tried to cheer up Jared by asking him to do basic movements in martial arts. Elsewhere, James again showed his cruelty when he did not hesitate to kill a woman in a small alley. However, his action this time was accidentally discovered by Roberto, who happened to be passing around the area. Long story short, Bone finally got a chance to fight Hammerman. It didn't take long for Bone to take down the Hammerman, and surprisingly, he defeated the big guy unharmed, making James look surprised that his master fighter could be defeated so easily. After handing over his bet money to Pinball, James then invited Bone and Pinball to dinner. James apparently intends to make Bone his flagship fighter in international underground fights, fronted by rulers and rich people worldwide, known as the Consortium. He wants Bone to fight Pretty Boy Price, the tournament's reigning champion. Because Bone still looks doubtful and tells James that he will consider his offer, James then asks Angela to seduce Bone and persuade him to accept James' offer and fight for him. After being alone with Angela in a room, Bone reveals to Angela that he is a cellmate and close friend of Danny, Angela's husband. One day, Danny is murdered by an inmate named JC on the orders of James. After Danny's death, Bone is determined to free Angela from James' bondage. After hearing Bone's explanation, Angela reveals that shortly after Danny went to prison, she gave birth to a son but lost custody of him and did not know if he was still alive. Bone said that her son was still alive and he knew his current whereabouts. He then promised Angela to meet her with her son. But before that, Angela must treat her addiction to drugs so she doesn't lose custody of her son again. After making plans with Angela, Bone tells James that he will consider his offer again. But before that, he made a condition to take Angela away. That same night, Bone immediately took Angela to a drug rehabilitation clinic. The following day, James goes to a high-profile mobster, Franklin McVeigh, and offers him $5 million to get the consortium's approval and schedule a fight between Bone and Price. That night, Bone finds out that Roberto has been murdered in front of the apartment building. The old man was mauled to death by James' dogs because Roberto witnessed one of the murders committed by James. Tamara is visibly shocked by Roberto's death, and Bone tries to calm her down. Elsewhere, Hammerman blindly attacks Pinball at a bar and forces him to tell Bone's whereabouts because he wants revenge on him. Hammerman almost completely beat Pinball. But then Bone appears and saves him. Because Bone refuses James' offer to become his fighter, James orders his thugs to hunt down Bone and Pinball. James then orders his henchmen to go to a drug rehab clinic to pick up Angela. But Bone had anticipated this and had moved Angela to a safer place so that James' men couldn't trace her whereabouts. Instead of meeting Angela, James' men confronted Bone at a drug rehabilitation clinic. After defeating all of James' men, Bone received a call from James who wanted to negotiate with him. Sending his location via a GPS phone, James had Bone and Pinball follow him to the McVeigh house. Once there, James ordered Bone to fight Price and win back the money, or else he would get Angela, Tamara, Jared, and Pinball killed. Before the fight, Bone reveals that he is a close friend of Danny and intends to avenge his best friend's death on James and free Danny's wife and son from James' snares. Unexpectedly, James admits all the actions that have deliberately framed Danny and sent him to prison, even ordering people to kill Danny in prison. However, without James realizing it, Bone secretly recorded James' confession via a GPS phone, which he sent to Pinball's cell phone. After that, Pinball then sent the video to the police so that the police immediately came there. Not long after, Price finally arrived and they were ready to do the battle that many people had been waiting for. Bone and Price are both great fighters and have high-level fighting techniques. The two engage in a fierce battle, but Bone can finally lock Price's movements and make him unable to move anymore. However, just as Bone was about to beat Price, the man knocked on the ground and announced that he was giving up, leaving Price to emerge victoriously. Because Bone casually admitted defeat and made himself a loss, James grabbed his katana and attacked him, filled with anger. Seeing this, McVeigh ordered his guards to throw his katana at Bone to make the fight even. However, Bone instead dropped the sword and only used the scabbard to confront James. It's not difficult for him to beat James with the sheath. In the chaos of people running for safety, Bone then directs a sword slash, causing James to cut off his own hand. Bone finally escapes before the police arrive at the McVeigh mansion to arrest James for the report sent by Pinball. A few days later, Angela visits the apartment building where Bone lives. It is finally revealed that the son Angela gave birth to after her husband was imprisoned was Jared. Angela, who has finally recovered from her addiction to drugs, is very happy to meet her son again. Tamara, who had threatened to kick Bone because of her relationship with James, finally offered him to stay in her apartment. But Bone politely declined her offer and told Tamara that he would only cause further trouble if he stayed there. Before exiting the apartment, Bone leaves Tamara an envelope full of cash and asks her to take Angela in once she is fully rehabilitated. Bone then parts ways with Pinball, saying he has business to take care of. During the end credits, McVeigh sends JC and his gang to punish James in the prison showers. And movie is over. Thanks for watching. Look forward to the next video.